The Simpsons is a powerhouse TV show. How else could an animated series be on air for over 30 years? There's no doubt that the showmakers have created just amazing content that has inspired countless people, but as Hannah Montana says, everybody makes mistakes. Hey most amazing fam, it's Abby here. Today I'm bringing you the top 10 scary lost Simpsons episodes. A quick aside, some of you may be wondering, Abby, where did you go? Are you back? Did you change your hair? And the answers are 1. School, 2. While school is closed, I'll drop in, and 3, well, yes, thank you for noticing. But that's enough about me, back to the topic at hand. Most of these Simpsons episodes we are talking about today were lost to time and are still able to be found, but just work with me here. This list has some ones that are scary bad and others that are just plain scary. So without further ado, let's hop into it. Starting us off at number 10, Crepes of Wrath. So this episode aired way back in the first season and is the 11th episode. It was originally meant to be the finale of season 1, but that changed. It has been criticized for being mildly xenophobic, but that's not the biggest issue for those who didn't like this episode. If people watched it as a kid, it could be quite troubling to watch, and one person even called it depressing. For 2 months, Bart is on exchange. He is put to work day and night and says his hosts don't feed him, and he sleeps on the floor. Yeah. So the first season and even the second season of The Simpsons had some heavier plot lines. They were not afraid to go darker. Crude animation paired with well-explored despair isn't exactly a way of describing The Simpsons these days, but it was back then. So there is a lost element to this episode, just a deleted scene. It was nothing too wild, just Bart saying woo to some dancers. But it happened, and that's lost, so On to number 9, That 90s Show. So we're gonna jump way ahead a whole 18 seasons to the 11th episode of the 19th season. You heard it the first time I said it, That 90s Show. Obviously the show title is a nod to the sitcom That 70s Show, and it also tries to be a throwback. The problem is The Simpsons already aired like a bunch of seasons in the 90s, so that already throws a wrench into the timeline. And if you haven't seen this episode, you may be thinking that this episode may revisit old plots or something, you know, make things a bit more complex. But alas, it does the opposite. It decides to rewrite history, just right over the canon. So sure, consistency in such a long-standing show is never a given, but this episode wasn't even that good, you know? It was just another episode of Homer and Marge breaking up and getting back together, but this time all before the kids. There were funny bits, like, don't get me wrong here, but overall it just wasn't enough for me to get over the diss to the original canonical material. On to number 8, The Principal and the Pauper. So this one was episode 2 of season 9. A fun fact, it aired the same year I was born. Another fun fact, on the legitimate Simpsons fan wiki, it is cited as one of the most controversially hated episodes ever produced. Yeah. And it was the last one written by Ken Keeler. He says it's the best work he's ever done, so you know, different opinions. But anyways, this episode is about how Principal Skinner is actually a man named Armin Tamzarian who is mistaken for Principal Skinner. Skinner's mom made the mistake and the ruse held for about 26 years. So then once it's found out and they put the real Skinner back in charge, the thing is no one really likes the real Skinner back in charge. So then they went to get Armin back and gave him Skinner's identity again, and they tied the real Skinner to a chair on a freight train car and then just sent him off. And then the judge ordered no one to talk about it ever again. So overall, people just didn't like that a major character was always a masked fraud and then the issue was covered up and dropped forever. As before, people just love their canon, what can I say? But let's move on to number 7, Mo Goes From Rags to Riches. So this is the 12th episode of season 23. In this episode, a rag tells the story of its life to the entire town. Really. So they were all there for a town meeting because the town hall is full of bed bugs, and then Mo, the barkeep, just storms off because people are making fun of him for his best friend, and in their defense, his best friend is bar rag, but in Mo's defense, cleaning supplies are our best friends right now. So take it or leave it. All in all, the episode centers around this rag weaving a story of how it came to be. So you've heard of watching paint dry, now here's a rag telling you a story. Yeah, it didn't receive great reviews by critics. One critic said it didn't really feel like an episode of The Simpsons, and others said the main plot and subplot were both boring. So in this case, more people are saying the episode may have been better off lost. Ouch. On to number 6, Every Man's Dream. So this is another recent one, the season 27 premiere. As the title suggests, this one has to do with dreaming, and it falls into the old trope. It was all a dream. At one point, you think it is subverting the trope even slightly with a double dream sequence where you think reality is the dream and you go back to your old reality, but then no, it scraps it all. Let me give you some more details. The basic plot of this one, we have just seen before. It's even already on this list. Homer's actions are enough to drive a wedge in his marriage to Marge. Then he tries to win her back, you know the drill. In this one, the couple separated and even saw other people, but Homer is seeing his pharmacist Candace, and we don't get an explanation of what Candace really sees in Homer. Like, he's a great guy at his core, but in this episode it doesn't really show that aspect of him. And also Marge and the family story just feels like an afterthought. Remember when I said the first and second season were a little more gritty? This episode's content like nearly had that chance and then just ignored it. And basically the fans noticed, didn't really like it too much. Let's move on to number 5, Diatribe of Mad Housewife. This one is the 10th episode of season 15. It is scary because Homer is working as an ambulance driver, and honestly nothing bad could have even happened in that situation and I would still be on edge. In one instance, the kids are riding with him. Bart says, "Dad, you've been driving in circles for 20 minutes. And then Lisa says, "Why don't you just admit you don't know where the hospital is?" And then Homer says, "Why don't you admit I know it's around here somewhere?" And that just little snippet is to say that they were lost on their way to the hospital, and that's a scary situation if they were in real life. Plus, Homer is an ambulance driver. That was his job. To know where the hospital. Like, obviously this is a cartoon. I get it, but still. And yes, lost and scary. It had everything that's in the title. That's all I'm gonna say. Okay, on to number 4, Bart the Fink. So this is from season 7, episode 15. This is the episode where Homer gives some somber, morbid advice. He says to Bart, "Don't let Krusty's death get you down, boy. People die all the time, just like that. Why, you could wake up dead tomorrow. Well, good night." And isn't that what every kid wants to hear before going to bed? So what led to this? Bart accidentally got Krusty arrested for tax fraud, and then Krusty faked his own death. So Bart is thinking it's his fault and is mourning his personal hero. So then Homer goes in, tries to give some good words, but then he says that, so Bart is confronted with the reality of his mortality as he waits for the night and sleep to come to him, and it's a lot for a kid. And so while it's good to remember your actions have consequences, telling kids they could die tomorrow is probably a step too far for me personally. Yeah. So let's move on to number 3, the first Simpsons Treehouse of Horror. So this one aired all the way back on October 25th, 1990. It is the 3rd episode of the 2nd season. So producers thought it would be possibly so unsettling that they had Marge give a warning to the audience that things were going to get scary. She speaks to the viewers and said it is going to be a scary episode and that it may be a good time to put the kids to bed. So for the Treehouse of Horror episodes, the first one in particular, this one was inspired by the EC Comics horror tales. And I would say this is one I would definitely recommend watching, so I will not spoil it completely, but I will say it does reference Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven, it has aliens in it, and there are elements of it that I would say make you just feel off, but I'll leave you to watch it and you judge for yourself. But this is one that is scary and I'd say lost to time. It's just so long ago. It's 1990, who's that, you know? Let's move on to number 2, Lisa Goes Gaga. So this one is just the lowest rated Simpsons episode of all time on IMDb. It's also the 22nd season's finale. Basically, Lady Gaga is teaching Lisa Simpson the meaning of happiness, but Dave Rada on Reddit summed up what critics were saying the best. It was released at the apogee of Lady Gaga's popularity, and it was a shameless attempt to cash in on the flavor of the month's popularity. The Simpsons episode damn near killed Gaga's career, and she had to sing songs from the Great American Songbook with Tony Bennett and do live theater on NBC to regain any cultural relevance. And wow, yeah, people were not, that was just really not a fan. People did not like that one at all. Yeah, but I like Lady Gaga. I think she's fun. On to number 1, Dead Bart. So if you're here, there is no doubt you've heard of this one. The one lost episode, Dead Bart. Ooh. And so if for whatever reason you haven't heard, there's a TV urban legend that there's a lost episode of The Simpsons called Dead Bart. It was an episode where Bart died. And the story goes that if you talk about it, anyone that worked on The Simpsons in those days will try to keep you away from Matt Groening. Apparently he doesn't like to talk about it. It allegedly happened in the first season and its production number was given to the later episode Moaning Lisa. It was hidden so no one would ask about it, and it was a gruesome story diving deep into loss and the effects of grief on a family. It had shots of Bart's corpse, made to look more realistic than usual in the cartoons, and extended shots of the family crying. Just really dark content. But I have to give you all the truth if you didn't know it already. It's a creepypasta, made up for the internet. But we have to give the author credit that they gave enough detail that they really made a bunch of people believe it. They posted under the name K.I. Simpson. And that is all I have for you today, fam. That was top 10 scary lost Simpsons episodes. Make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you like this Simpsons deep dive, and check out all of our most amazing social media. Woo. I've been your host, Abby, and until next time, have a good one. Bye! Okay. Yeah, that's me throwing it back. Back to you, Dan. Dancing's back. Tap dancing.